Welcome. This is David Boles, Human Meme. Today's topic, A Promise Kept. Marshall Jamison Poetry. Welcome to part 2 of our Marshall Jamison Poetry Slam. Please visit humanmeme.com and do a search for Marshall Jamison to find the Waking Up Dead podcast for the first instance of this series. Marshall Jamison was a collaborator and mentor of mine, and we were friends for over 25 years. I remember when Marshall's wife was in the hospital. He was retired and stuck at home, lonely and scared. And I would call him every day just to check in and chat. He was worried the doctors said his wife was not fighting, and he didn't understand why. Why, David? Why? Why is she not fighting? I didn't know the answer, but I knew what he meant. His wife was a powerhouse, with smoky eyes and always moving, packed with energy and love and smarts, and yet, when it mattered the most, her doctors were telling him she was giving up. That news broke him. His wife eventually got a little bit better, but she never returned to her former form. Marshall Jamison was broken. The Judge's Decision. First published September 8, 1997. He was a tall man, proud, and at 78 the judge, his eyes steel blue, held a steady gaze. As he looked down at me, he stood ramrod straight. Without raising his voice, he revealed my fate. To me, it seemed a fair, if severe one, at the age of 8. My crime? The third-grade teacher had reported to my mother my one day's absence from his class. There, when riding my new bike to school, I had eyed, in the rippling water under the river bridge, a truly enormous bass. And as I told the judge, the chance for such a magnificent catch drove all thoughts of proceeding to class to pass. The judge, who was himself a fisherman of note, had often taken me on the Delaware River in his old rowboat. So to the river I raced for my gear, pole, and bait. After a long, careful casting, an interminable wait, the allure of my lures spelled that big bass's fate. My own, the judge decided, would rest on my reply to his wish for a piece of that magnificent, glorious fish to cook. So supplied, with a grin, my grandfather let me off the hook. A Promise Kept. March 21st, 1997. He held her again, as he had when she first told him. Then she told him again, and then he promised to marry her as soon as he was 18. And he did. At 22, after 2 more babies, and before they could conceive again, he volunteered for the Navy, took basic training in California, was assigned to Pacific duty, finally to Hawaii, and the battleship USS Arizona. Forever. High Flyers on Demand. Published February 17, 1997. Write something about ospreys and eagles, my Maine sister-in-law says to me. Never before has she shown that much interest in my poetry. And it gave me pause because she's extremely pretty and has a brain to match her looks, so I considered her words carefully. Then I thought back to my old boyhood days in summer when I prowled the rocky shore, fished for flounders in the bay, dreamed of outer islands I'd discover and explore. So when a lobsterman I knew said he was setting traps out there, at 4 a.m. I got up to go with him, and everywhere. Out there on the isles we found the ospreys, nests high, in stunted island pines, buffeted by sea winds apart, secure in attitude. We watched them from afar, understanding they weren't being rude, but that they'd learned from their friends, the eagles, the joy, the peace in quiet solitude. A Memory of Emily, February 4, 1997. On the wind-swept lake, a wild duck sets down quietly, folds and refolds his wings carefully, as if to put them away for a while. A female mallard, that we like to think of as his mate, hovers along the shore over tiny ducklings that, in the dark, we count at 8. In the early partial sunshine of the next day's morning light, our 6-year-old granddaughter happily corrects my count to 10. Tiny, brown, lively, constantly chirping newcomers to the experience of life. Often fraught with danger, but with their newfound joy, exploration. A discovery of earth, water, sky, and shore, of maternal care. And on her part, what may surely be described as love. For the new mother's constant supervision and concern is a revelation to us all who watch the family's growth, and sad to say, some of its members' death. For the joy of a newfound life was shortened for almost half the brood by occurrences their watchful guardian could not control. The wake of a speedboat's churning propeller, a hawk's lightning bolt descent and attack, and an offshore gull that blew 2 of them away from her sheltering wings. Now the remaining mallard family has responded to the allure of the horizon, and may no longer be seen along our shore. They share a wider vision of earth, sky, and sea, with all living creatures wild and free. Hypotenuse, January 10, 1997. It's very abstruse and hard to make use of the word hypotenuse, unless the side of a right-handed triangle is opposite the right angle. The Skipper, published January 1, 1997. The captain's name was Amos, although he was never heard to answer to it, except when he was at home with the woman he adored and thought of as a lady, which she was, grizzled, gray, but eagle-eyed, and 46 years old. He looked nearer 60. After 20 years of sea service to the American West African Line, seaman, bosun, mate, and finally, master. Torpedoed in 41, naked, off Madagascar. A man to trust your life to when crossing the North Atlantic 6 times, 55 or so war-torn years ago. A Maine summer day, December 9, 1996. It was the kind of day, if you were fishing or hunting or haying, you thanked the good Lord for. Not quite, but kinda like praying. In the distant sky to the south, an eagle flew, soaring high against the sun. And in the bay, a school of tinker mackerel surfaced for a frantic run. At our camp the tide was almost high, and so were the two who pulled their skiff towards our shore. Awash in salt water and empty bottles of what had been Fegenspan beer and a tubful of mackerel or more. The bigger of the two men, wearing heavy overalls and tall rubber boots, stood up to drain the dregs of a bottle of gin. He staggered as the little boat rolled on the tide, still coming in, and before he could regain his frantic balance, he yelled, took a drunken step or two as if in a crazy dance, and fell full length over the side, hitting his head on an empty oarlock, then sank out of sight like a huge, heavy, insensate rock. His partner screamed hoarsely, "He can't swim!" and drunkenly threw a loose oar after him. I, with my customarily swift response to danger or emergency, stood transfixed, wide-eyed, grim. But my buddy, Jimmy Mack, without a word, dove into the frightening, swirling flood. Searching quickly below the surface, he came up empty, pale, face drained of blood. A deep, deep breath, and down again, under the boat. He swam without a sign of fear. The prayer I'd saved that morning was now answered loud and clear. For suddenly, out of the briny, dark sea water, I saw 2 heads appear. And grabbing the line I threw to him, Jim hauled the big drunk out and onto shore, where, gasping and crying, belching and retching, he swore to us he'd drink no more. Later his partner, too, swore off the booze. Since they'd drunk all they had, he had little to lose. We let them go easy, with only this rub. We asked for and got half the mackerel in the tub. So in our own way, we too went fishing that day. Thank you for listening. Be a human meme.